Everybody, welcome to another episode of Life Talks. Today, I have my most recurring guest, my father, Peter Bacchioni. Thanks for joining me, Dad.
Oh, my pleasure, son.
So you
Being here.
are going away in a few days. Maybe we can start talking about that. So you're going to Italy. So maybe you could talk
Yeah,
about, your background with the culture and what you love about it so much and why you're going there.
yeah. Well, as you know, I was born there, and I have an affinity for the country. I can't even explain it. It's like when I get there, I feel welcome. So when I get to the airport, I don't feel like a stranger. I feel like I'm home. Like I said, I can't explain it, but it's a great feeling.
Where in Italy were you born?
I was born in a little town called Bercetto, which is a province of Parma. Many people have heard of Parmesan cheese and Parmesan tomatoes and
Yeah.
things like that. But yeah, it's something inside of me that makes me feel very welcome when I go to that country. So yeah, we're excited. We're only going for 2.5 weeks. We're going to a place called Lake Como, which is about an hour away from Milan, which is a big city. And we're staying in a hotel, and we're going to be staying in a little town called Menaggio, which is a little village. Where we're going is Lake Como, which is probably the second largest lake in Italy, and there are towns around the lake, and we're staying at one of them called Menaggio. And then what we do is we just hang out in the town, which is really a cool town. We stay in the piazza, the main square, and then people just hang out. It's just such a different culture there. People are more relaxed, and they're not workaholics like we are here. They take time out to enjoy. Typically, people that own businesses will take a break. They'll open up their shop in the morning, and then around 12, 1 o'clock, they'll close their shop for a couple of hours and just take it easy, go home and do what they need to do and come back and then finish up maybe 5, 6, 7 o'clock, depending on their work schedule. But much more relaxed. The bureaucracy, they have a difficult bureaucracy, right? But they don't really worry too much about things getting done. If they don't get it done today, it'll be done tomorrow. So typically, if you have to go to an administrative office for something to do with passports or whatever, and you're online, and 5 o'clock comes around and says it's closing time, that's it. You have to come back tomorrow. They're not going to hang around. And so they just, but much more laid back, not so productive work
Oh, you don't love New
oriented
York
like we
City?
are. Huh?
You don't love New York City? The busyness and the hustle and the
Oh,
bustle?
no, I guess, I was basically raised in New York City, so you kind of get used to stuff. At some point, we were living underneath the train, it's called the L, all sorts of noise and stuff. And so you get so numb that you sometimes don't even realize the craziness. But a lot different from Italy, from where I came from. And again, my heritage is such that my family came from a farm. We were poor farm people that ate their food, grew their food from the land.
Yeah.
Didn't have much, but happy people, happy-go-lucky people. So yeah, so going there. We're leaving here Friday, and we'll be back, I guess, around the 10th of May. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, enjoy your time there. I'm definitely in agreement with you. I've always really despised the city. Yeah, I remember like seeing pictures. It's kind of like, when you see like satellite pictures of like green pastures and then the city, it's like a cancer almost, and this hustle and bustle, and even songs like they pave paradise and put up a parking lot. And I
Yeah,
think there's certain truths of like, industrialization. There's definitely so much good that's come out of it, but I feel like it's almost reflective of like the mind, right? The mind is a great, as you've always say, the mind's a great servant, a terrible master. And in some way, I think it's kind of a reflection of that. Like when we're true being, I think that we can integrate these parts of our culture. But um, it's, you know, it's like the busy mind. The busy mind is busyness versus like, you know, when you walk into a good business versus a busyness, you know, just the
Yeah.
certain values that people adopt, and, you know, the quality and the values of the differences of that. But generally, I think a lot of cities are not uh, integrated with nature, and we'll destroy ourselves if like everything is a city and it's all, you know, um, you know, there's that. I definitely agree. You get that certain feeling when you're out in the when you're out in nature, you know, when you're out connected with yeah, you just see like I went out to Utah a few months ago, just seeing those mountains. You can't explain that. It's just beautiful, you know, versus this busy, go, go, go.
Yeah, it's like you become like a robot.
Yeah.
It's- I think we're built to be connected to nature. Uh, it's so well, we live here in Whitestone, which is kind of like suburbs of New York City, Manhattan. It's still very noisy here. In fact, it's so noisy that you could set your clock to the noise. Which what I mean by that is that at 8:30 in the morning, there's a family that gets up, they get the kids jump into the car, go to school, and they make a lot of noise, and their kids make noise. But you know, at 8:30, it's time for school. So, you know,
Yeah.
well, even before that, at 6:30, there's one guy, he has a car that's really muffled. Has a muffled sound to his car, really loud. So he's up at 6:30. So we know it's 6:30 at that time, and the family, and then in the afternoon, the school lets out, so the kids are out, and you hear that. And then of course you've got all day long the sirens and ambulances for one thing or another. And then early in the morning around 1 o'clock or so, there's the car races, make a lot of noise on Clearview Expressway. So you know that, so that's crazy. But I guess you could live without even a watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot different. City's a lot different than the country.
But now paint the picture for Italy. What is it like there? The food, the you know, the I guess the scenery and all that.
It's like, I don't know, it's almost like timeless, because you're there and you see it so peaceful, and you get you get drawn into the present moment a lot more than here. Um, and the food is, I can't explain it. It's like basic food, basic ingredients are so fresh. You go to the local supermarket, and the fruits there, the grapes or peaches or whatever local vegetables and fruits are in season, they're plump, they're juicy, they smell so good. So it's like, it's incredible. It's such a gift to just be and enjoy. Italy's like an invitation to enjoy life. That's how I see it. But yeah, the food is basic, nothing really extraordinary about Italian food. Now, it's regional, depending on where you go. Go down south, there's more seafood uh, type of food because you're close to the sea. Up north, uh, depending again where, in the middle of the country, uh, meat, like in Florence, the beef steaks are awesome, for that. Then further up, you got more basic food, like where we came from. Pasta was a big thing. They have different pastas, and they have gnocchi and basic foods. Because again, it's the original menu would come from farm people that poor, that were poor, and made do with what they had. So the potatoes, and everybody can make flour and water. So there's a lot of pasta, but then there's a little different variations of pasta, which comes of different variations of different sauces. And yeah, so it's all basic living, basic food. The air is cleaner, it's quieter. Like at night, it's so quiet, it's peaceful. people, again, like I said, more laid back. Although some, there are some Italian people can get pretty passionate at times. Like they could get pretty political and get into, but they're passionate. They really believe in what they believe in, and they express themselves that way, even
Yeah.
with their hands. I see myself using my hands right now as I speak. So it's more into living as opposed to into your work or into your career. It's getting together. Family is still an important, vibrant part of life. The values are different because of the lifestyle. So to me, it's a better way to live. My parents, God bless them, they came here. They came here for a better life, and I question that because I say to myself, okay, in what way is it better?
Yeah. What defines the better life?
Yeah. So, to them, they were very poor and they wanted, I guess they were looking for the material things and they found it here. My father worked, he worked his ass off, mostly in his own businesses, put in a lot of hours and put a lot of sweat and tears. So I really question was it really better? Because there are a lot of people that didn't come.
And you didn't have a lot of time really to spend with him, quality time together, right?
Right. And I don't know if that's the reason.
Which was
Partly the
kind of the
reason.
opposite with me and you, because we got to spend a lot of time. The classic example we always bring up is playing wiffle ball in the backyard, and I made you run the bases.
You still do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You gotta play. You gotta play it the right way, man. You gotta hit, you gotta run, man.
Yeah, you made me run the base.
Yeah.
Just you and me. It was good times. Yeah, so it's a different world. There's no doubt, it's a different world. But I love visiting. I love going back, and in my next life, I would like to live there.
All right. Well, no more softball questions. Now we're going into hardball. So, we go nice to talk about Italy, and now we get into the deep stuff, which we do pretty much every day. And then at the end of the conversations, you want to take a nap. Because I gotta get to the core, man. I gotta get to the core questions. But maybe we can branch off of that. What does that mean to you? What does it mean? Because I think that's actually a really good question. Is what does it mean to give a better life to people, to the next generation? Because I think the mind will get in the way and say, well, I want a better life, which means more money or whatever it is. And I think on the surface, it's a good intention. But to you, what does it mean to have a better life for the next generation, for your kids?
Well, it means, first of all, to have core values, values that reflect, who you are as a person. Values have changed from since I grew up, but yeah, it's really, I think, if I was to boil it all down, is to be able to be more present is the key. To more present in enjoying the many wonders of our world, enjoying the people that matter most in your life. It's appreciating, I guess, the intangibles, things that are everlasting, as opposed to things that don't last. With time, just evaporate. So to be present in and enjoy the dance of life, beautiful dance. We don't listen to the music anymore. We've lost the ability to participate and to join hands and
Yeah, we hear it,
enjoy.
but we don't listen.
Yeah, we're too busy. We're too busy to listen. That's a waste of time to listen. I have too much to say. I got to talk. Listen to me. Yeah, this is anxiety. It's from wanting to do more and more, and it really isn't that much more. We lose the basic beauty of life by wanting to do, by wanting to make, by creating, by doing, rather than just being. So to me, that's the key. My ancestors knew how to be. They didn't have very much, but they knew how to be with their family. They had a meal, they made their own meal, they sat at dinner. They didn't have a lot of clothes, they didn't have cars and all this stuff, but they had each other. And they were happy. It was obvious. I went there one year, I think it was 1958. I must have been 13, 14 years old. So they were happy. These are happy people on the farm. We sat at the table and we laughed and we shared our lives. And it just doesn't get better than that. We think it does. We think that when we chase and we get the better house and the bigger car or the second car, or we do all these things, that we're gonna find joy and peace and all the things that all human beings need and want. No, it ain't there. It's right in front of you. We don't see it.
Yeah, I think joy is actually a very good word, which is different. Well, you said happiness, but I think that joy is better than happiness, because happiness is fleeting. Joy is spontaneous. Happiness is, as you say, it's attributed to the cars and the house, but paradoxically, there's nothing wrong with the cars or the house or the material things. It's part of the game, right? To be
Yeah.
in the world, but not of it. But when those things are a byproduct of your being, then they can be enjoyed. Because when your being is rooted in values and fulfillment and having family and real connections and that, then those things come out of that. Money comes out of the byproduct of your being. You're giving value to other people, you're being present. You can make a lot of money that way. You could also make a lot of money by chasing those things, and when you chase them, it'll never be enough. So, and it's funny because they're like mirrors of each other. You can see two people who have $1 million. One of them is truly fulfilled, the other one isn't. One chased money, the other attracted money, I guess is the difference. They track those things, because I think I think I've learned that in my life too. It just, there's been times where like, no, I have to deny the world, right? Deny it. But then that's not it either, because it's how to be. It's a paradox, how to be in the world but not of it, right?
Yeah, Alan Watts, talks about work and the pleasure that comes from work. But his take on it, as I understand it, is that people get into jobs to make money, and then they make money and they spend it, but it just goes round and round, and they're miserable. But they're making money, so that's why they do it. They don't do it to have a fulfilling life. And as opposed to someone who says, you know what, I don't want to make money. I don't need to make money, but I do want to have a fulfilling life. And his contention is that if you do something that you really fulfills you,
You become a master.
The money will come, huh?
Yeah.
The money will.
You become a master at it, and you make even more money from doing that.
That's exactly where he goes to with that. Yeah. So eventually you become so good at it, even though you're making money, the money will come because you will be so masterful at what you do. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, you've inspired me in part to make this channel. I love these conversations. And sometimes when I would have these conversations with people would be completely exhausted. They wouldn't be interested. They want to talk about sports or, surface level things. And there's nothing wrong with that. But just to me, I never lost that why. Yeah. And that's got me in trouble with a lot of things because, to me, why is the most important question. It actually exposes people, because if you ask enough whys, it shows the context of the character. A lot of people lose that why, just do what you're told, just and it's why gives the meaning to why you do what you do. And the more you go into that why, the more those uncomfortable truths come up. For example, a lot of my whys were based off superficial reasons, like just making, and that's why I say it's not even a judgment, right? It's almost like a process of mirroring people. Well, I just did what they did. It's like, well, everybody's many people are just mirroring what other people do. There's few people living from within. Because that puts you in a place where, as your favorite song is My Way, right? One of
Yeah.
your favorite songs. And I've grown into it's thy way. What is thy way? And thy way is the way of just going within, because I say that because my way could be like, I'm doing it my way, not your way. There's a certain arrogance there, but thy way is it's this inner trust. Like, what do I believe? What do I think? And that's led me to make this podcast. I love having conversations about, these different things. It's fun. It's cool, to be in the position where I get to learn how to communicate.
And then if you can make money at it, that's a
Yeah.
cool.
And originally that's what I made this for, was like, how can I make money? But as it's, I feel like it was more naive, whereas now it's more, I get to network with people. I get to connect with more and more people, and I get to learn. I can see the world clearer, because just by having a conversation with you and all the guests that I've had on, it sharpens my lens to see the world as it is versus how I've grown up to project it to be. So to me, it's like that to me is something that's what people are hungry for the most, right? Is that we all want that inner clarity. I mean, and the more I think you have that inner clarity, the more you open yourself up to being attacked. And I think that's where like the idea of Christ has come in. Because, I often talk about this with you, is the idea of the willingness to be hated, right? When you start to really express yourself and be your own man, right? People want to put you into a box. You're a specific type of person. Oh, you're a Democrat. Oh, you're a Republican. Oh, you're this person. You're that person. Oh, you're an extrovert. You're an introvert. At a certain point of being, which is one of our favorite words, it's the way of no way. You are unfolding in life. You're being fully present. People can't figure you out because you don't label. You're not thinking. You're not living in the thinking mind anymore. You're just totally present. It's kind of, yesterday I was out for brunch, and there's a baby at the end of the table, and I was just looking at her eyes, and her eyes were like that. Her eyes were like, she was like, just looking around, and we talk about the observer. She was the observer, and she was not identified with it. Somebody gave her food, she ate the food. And it's the same thing with like a dog, and the reason I bring that up, and to tie it with what I was just saying, is that the idea that, when you really trust within, you're just observing, you're listening, you're being present, then, because the hard part comes in when you have the mind. So then how do you integrate the mind that, you can learn and interact with the world, but don't lose that observer mindset? Because otherwise you get into these belief systems, and then, these belief systems can be, they can be negative, or they can go to your ego, right? In other words, I can say, oh, I'm such a bad person. This is a belief system that we may have gotten from other people. Or you say, I'm so great, I'm the best. They're both lies. So, because to be in the way, it's like, what does a baby think? They're not thinking, am I the best or am I the worst? It's just being fully present. So I thought that was cool to see that.
Yeah, that's right. We can learn from that. We can
like
learn.
In these conversations, it just flows. Like, we didn't plan this conversation. I'll talk about whatever with anybody.
Yeah, it's the natural way, as opposed to the program way. The program way is much more difficult because there's resistance, there's control, there's worry and anxiety, as opposed to just trusting and letting go, and just like you said, being. That's who we are. We're human beings.
Yeah.
we learn, we're human doings. I mean, we've talked about this so many times. We are more concerned as human beings in what we do than as opposed to who we are. In a conversation, invariably you meet somebody, invariably you get on the topic of what you do. And then the whole story becomes about what you do. And
yes.
there's no discussion about who you really are. What does really drive you?
Then I catch myself in these conversations too, because at a certain point when I start, like, when you get into that flow, that's where I know it's big. And then you just can tell there's no more pressure. Because sometimes I have interviews with people and it's like, at first I started up and we have conversations, but at a certain point, like there's certain things that I'll say, you know, and then it'll cause a spark and then the conversation gets real. And that's
Yeah.
what I try to do, intentionally at first, but then that it's like you get lost in the conversation and then you just start saying things out of your being.
Yeah.
And it's just so much more, you say things that resonate with people. And it's funny, I see on the analytics too, like some of the most popular videos I have on my channel are the ones that it was so much more flow. Like I know I got off that podcast and it was so flow. And then I just see how many more views it has. And it's really interesting. And that's the thing. You can't try to do that. It's
Right.
just I have to let go of my personality. I can't, that's why I don't like having like a list of questions,
Right.
with the exception of promoting people that I think our values are aligned in, um,
No, I think you're doing important work because I think that the message is just be yourself. It's not complicated. We're trying to figure everything out. There's really nothing what is there to figure out? Just figure out what really motivates you as a person and go that way. Just go with that. That's why, do what you love what you do. It's so basic, no, but we don't look at it that way. We're programmed to have certain roles in what we do in our activities. We're programmed to act certain ways in certain situations, and we get lost in the process. We get lost, and we lose that childlike ability to be ourselves. And it's what a loss for the person and what a loss for humanity, because people lose the opportunity to see people for who they really are. So, but it's a strange world that we live in. We don't honor each other the way we should, just to be who we are, just to be another human being. That's all that's necessary. It's not whether you're a lawyer or a doctor or you have more things than other people have, more power. We get lost in those things and we lose our very selves and lose the opportunity to share our true beings with other.
Yeah, what shall man gain if he gains the whole world but loses his soul?
Yeah, right.
And I think our soul is our mission here.
Yeah.
And the only way that we connect with our mission is by letting go of what we should do. And I think that for me, I've learned the most through pain, my contracted states, when I would be going, hustling, bustling. And then I just end up right back where I started. And it wasn't until I really spent time alone and really was there, but was present with my mind, the constant thoughts, and just being aware of it, and then understanding where those triggers start, and we've talked a lot about that, same thing with you. Your suffering has come from the world and parents and the culture, and what's looked at as the happy life, right, versus true fulfillment. It's a difficult place to go, because you start getting, we connect with this, right? It's when you start being quiet, that's when his mind starts really acting up.
Yeah, and it's we allow our parents, we allow our educators, we allow our friends, we allow everyone that we connect with to identify who we are. They basically tell us how we should be, and in the process, we lose ourselves. So I think the message is find your true being and just be who you're born. You're already there. Just discover. I think discover is a better word. Discover who you really are, and then just be.
Well, that's the kingdom. That's the kingdom of heaven, right? The kingdom of heaven is within. It's not out there. It's not going to come out of money. It's not going to come out of material things. It's within you. So I think you nailed it with the word discover, because it's not something you achieve. It's something you realize within yourself. And what's the quote? It's I've found the enemy, and the enemy is me. You are your own worst critic, and you're your own best friend. You can be there. I mean, I speak on my own mind. Some of the worst things people have said to me doesn't top what I've said to myself. My lack of belief in myself. And where did I get this from? Oh, I got this from other people who had lack of belief in themselves. And it goes all the way back, to Adam and Eve, right? What is true? What is not true? Well, when you let go of that and you don't, because to me, that's really where the power goes. The power goes on what what is common sense. That to me is, it's something, what, and it's almost like the mind is, and I just put out a video on the idea of the mind is like and Muji talks about this too. We listen to Muji over these years. The mind is, the mind should bite, because it bites you on where you're exposed. So for example, if in other words, you have to come up with a better reason to overcome the mind. So the mind only has power when you give validity to it. Once you start challenging the mind, and the way you challenge the mind is not the way the mind challenges us. The way we challenge the mind is by bring it, understanding the mind, not fighting the mind. So if we have a negative belief system, say, oh, okay, well, what are you trying to tell me, mind? You're not good enough. Where did you learn that from, mind? So we're not trying to fight the mind. We try to understand the mind. And once we understand the mind, they don't have power anymore. But the more, and in the same way, that's how we interact with people, or we should interact with people. If you fight somebody who's an idiot, they'll drag you down to their level and they'll beat you. If you try to understand the other person, understand that they are you, you let go of trying to be right.
That's a good point, Amy, but I would take it a step further, is that we are not the mind and we are not our thoughts.
Yeah.
Reality is not based on our thinking. Now, our thoughts are what happens to us as being a person. That's not who we are, though. We need to step back and recognize that, because otherwise we could make ourselves crazy if we start entertaining all the thoughts that we get. Our thoughts are like, it's a product of our mind. Just like blood that flows out of our heart is the blood that flows, it comes from the heart, and we don't control that. It just happens. So the mind, the mind produces these thoughts because that's what it does. But that's not who we are. We have to step back and see the difference there, and to operate from that consciousness. So, and avoid the unconsciousness, which is the form, which is all the objects that are around us, trying to identify who we are. So that's a trick. I think that's the trick, is to not be fooled by the mind, because the mind is going to take you in the wrong place. It's going to take you into falsehood. It's not going to take you to the truth.
Yeah, I did a podcast the other day, speaking of truth. I mean, we live in a world now where men are becoming women and women are becoming men. And you're talking about losing identity. And for a long time, I didn't want to talk about this, but you don't talk about it, you don't confront it, it doesn't go away. But you can't try to change anybody. I never push my views on other people, but there's this idea, with men and women, that, men, you have this idea of toxic masculinity now, right? So this idea that, men are toxic, and men can't be men anymore. What does that mean? What is this idea that men can't, men and women are competing with each other now. And this idea, these two ideas that I've always, to me, have give balance to the world. I think when a man truly expresses his masculinity, a woman truly expresses her femininity, you have a beautiful world. You have a harmonious world. It's like the yin and the yang, right? But we now have this world where that's a competition now. So women are competing with men, men are competing with women, instead of complementing each other. So this idea, for example, women can't be weak anymore. That's, to me, a lie, because to me, what is the opposite of strong? It's weak. Why is weak bad? There's nothing wrong with weak. And in the yin and the yang, there's an aspect of the masculine when connected with the feminine, that he has an emotional side. but that's not his being. And in the same way that women have a logical side, but that's not their being. Their being is emotional. And in the same
Right.
way, you have nature versus nurture. Well, I wouldn't want a world where it's just nature, just brutality, right? Where it's just, you know, it's masculine oriented, but I wouldn't want just a world where it's feminine oriented, where nurture, where everything I'm protected and provided for. You know, if that was the case, just put me in jail, right? Then I'll have my 3 meals a day. I'll be protected. I'll be taken care of, but that's not life either. So it's like the devouring mother versus the tyrannical father. So to me, we're lacking a connection between men and women, and we've talked about this for years. But it's like we already knew it, but we wouldn't talk about it. So what's happening, I think, now is a lot of people are trying to find their identity in their, you know, is this the same it comes back to the mind, right? Because if you think of why I need to be a man in the mind, well, then I'm going to get a truck and I'm going to have this and I'm going to do that and I'll be a man. That's bullshit. To me, it's more when you get back into the being factor, when you are living presently and consciously, you are naturally in your polarity as a man or a woman. But as long as you're thinking about being a man or a woman's thinking about being a woman and then adopting these ideas, I must be an independent woman. I mean, I have to be real and honest with me. It's I don't want an independent woman. I want someone. You know, I came across this. I think you'd like this. I'm interested in what you have to say on this because I've done a lot of inner work with myself, right? Because I think that women aren't naturally going to be, you know, women have to put up a front, I think, because there's a lot of toxic men out there, right? So they have to kind of put up guards in a certain way. So they have to be in touch with their masculine, right? And I think that's what happened because I think the problem is that we have a lot of weak men in our culture who aren't afraid to confront, they aren't able to speak up. They shy away from confrontation. And so as a byproduct of that, women have to step into the arena. So I think it's just gone to the crazy extent. So what I think for me, this is really clicked. I'm really interested in what you have to say. In order for a man to lead a woman, a man must be led. A man must be led by something higher than him. In order for a woman to follow a man, she must be comfortable in following a man. So if, and to me, I think that's the highest truth, a man of integrity. So when I obey my highest version of myself and I'm disciplined in that, I am effectively will lead people to follow me versus you must follow me. And I think this is where women, for example, have this idea that they complain about he's too controlling, right? He's a guy who's too controlling because he's trying to appear that way versus I am obedient to, let's take it this way. If I tell you, hey, dad, show up at this time, and then I don't show up at this time, why would you follow me? You can say he says this time and then he doesn't show up. But if I'm obedient to what I say, my word is my bond, you're more likely to follow and vice versa, right? I think to be a good leader, you have to be a good follower. But I think this is the problem that because we've lacked a lot of integrity, and there's a lot of reasons too. I think Hollywood has brought us, I mean, I talk openly about, for me, it was porn and being in this addicted mindset of just, it's like a neediness. And then as this part starts to die, it's like, oh, this is my power. My power is that we're born to be leaders as men. So I know I'm saying a handful here. So, but, you know, any parts that resonate with you and, you know, what is it? The heavy word is, what does it mean to be a man? I often ask this question to a lot of people because I think I get a lot of different answers. Maybe if you could just share what that means to you.
I think, again, I don't, we're trying to complicate this again, because a man is a man, a woman is a woman. What does that mean? Well, take a look at our animals, the animals in the forest, in the frontier. Do they need to follow a role? They are just, they do what they need to do. The male goes out and does the hunting, protects the family, protects the spouse and the children. He's out there doing what he needs to do. it's not he needs to be powerful, he needs to be controlled. He's just being his essence as the mother is, nurturing, feeding the children. It's that simple. We've lost the ability to be that simple. We put more importance on other things than uh, the basic family structure, because to me, that's where it all stems from. This is why you need a male versus a female, right? So that we can raise our children properly. Well, we've lost the ability to appreciate and value those inherent qualities that come with the territory. So, for example, society belittles women today for us being a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
Well, what could be more natural or basic than that? What could be more important than that? To nurture a child with the husband, to grow a child, to raise a child to become happy, joyful, independent, responsible person that can make a contribution to the community. What could possibly be more important than that? Well, society, culture today would say, well, becoming like a man, like you said, climbing the corporate ladder, taking on these executive responsibilities, proving that a woman could be like a man, without recognizing that by doing that, she's doing disservice to herself and to society. And I think this is one of the reasons why our society is collapsing.
Yeah.
That's why it's collapsing. So being a man is just being who you are. Being a woman is who you are. You're already there.
Yeah, and I was so I for
Don't look
me
for
I
the
was
answer. It's there.
yeah. Yeah, and I think I've been sold a lie too, that the importance of family is invaluable. Don't get married. Well, my view has changed on that. It's like I think it's so important to have a family. The to me, it's the spirit of the father I always talk about. If God is anything, it's a spirit of a father. It's what makes a loving father, right? And that handed down generation to generation. And I think it's a game of telephone. Each generation kind of loses that original message, but some people have retained it. It's what is the highest way of being the father, and we can relate that to, a certain time, it was a king. What would be the highest version of a king? What would be a noble king, right? What ideals do you have to follow in order to be the most effective leader, right? And I think that's the integration of the highest value of yourself, the Christ. What is the Christ within? What would Christ do, right? What would Jesus do? I used to say that as a kid, and it would always make me think, well, that was just another way of saying what would be the highest version of what you would do. And it when you do it, when you handle situations perfectly. You couldn't have handled it any better. Then we talk about Seinfeld, right? It's like the George Costanza scene where he's just like, where he's having the shrimp and he's thinking of a comeback. Oh, I should have said that. It's just like those situations where when we're in that, we are the highest version of ourselves. I think we really are having a stroke. Men are failing to lead, and because of that, women are taking on that role.
So, where do we go from here? Because you see where the trend, you see where we're heading. You're right. Men are starting to look and operate like women. They're becoming much more feminine. I mean, if you don't see that, you're blind. I mean, just the TV commercials, for example, are a good indicator. Men are depicted as more mothering, more emotional, more like women.
Yeah.
And they're belittled. They're not respected.
Yeah, you think of shows like Simpsons or Family Guy or Everybody Loves Raymond.
Yeah.
Classic.
So now you see the women, in roles that basically were masculine. You're seeing, and so when a woman becomes the first baseball coach, That's the latest thing. The Yankees, I think, just announced that um, a female just became manager of, I think it was one of their minor league teams.
Yeah.
It's a big deal, It's like, wow, this is groundbreaking stuff. Well, I don't know if it's groundbreaking stuff anymore, but this is how society sees it.
Yeah. Anything you could do, I could do better versus, and that's the thing too. It's not even a matter of can people do it. This is where I think the power is, right? Because to tell a woman she shouldn't do something, I think, again, this is coming from a weak man. I think a woman should do whatever she wants. The question becomes, what is natural? And why are we doing what we're doing? And I'd say that we were sold on this competition. So once all the women are leading, then we don't need men anymore, right? So then it becomes, to me, it's more of the yin and the yang. We have a balance. There's the masculine and the feminine. There's the positive and there's the negative. But when we lose connection with our natural, it's not that people can't do it. We can do whatever we want. The question is, why are we doing it?
Yeah. And what complicates it even more is that, and again, I know I'm generalizing now, but I tend to see more often than not, women not only are going to have a career,
And the family.
they're going to have a family to have it all. And so they're doing a disservice to their career, and they're doing a disservice to their own family. And so it's like, so what is driving women today, really? And to me, it's probably the unconscious. And it's society communicating that, if you want to be a respectful woman today, you need to do it all.
Yeah.
But
this is all the mind.
You're not looking at the consequences of that.
And I think a big part of it, because this isn't to blame women. I think
no, it's not.
Yeah, right. I'm not saying you're saying. For me, I mean, because I look at myself, right? When I first made this channel, I said, how do I create a channel that's going to create value? And it just came back to, well, first of all, I have to call out my own bullshit. That's first of all. So, I talk about how, well, I was weak. So how does that influence and ripple out through time, right? And where did I get my weakness from? And who was weak and where did they get their belief systems from? And as I've really articulated that the best I can, I start with myself first. The weakest version of me has to die. So that's how I started. And I think that's what, for me, one of the biggest problems we've had is weak men. And in my experience, that women are hungry for strong men. And what does that mean, right? And I think we can go into a whole podcast for just that, but the ability to confront problems. And I think this is the idea of nature versus the nurture. And I think I say often too, my mother was a great mother. She's not a good father. And it's like, I wouldn't go to you asking for pregnancy advice. I would go to women.
And I'm not, and I didn't make a good mother.
Correct.
Exactly right. And the child needs both. So what happens, the difficulty that I have is that today's woman, so to speak, right, quote, so it's not quote everybody, today's woman wants to have it all. So you take a look at what happens to the family. Okay, the woman has a career, so and then she has a child, a young child, has to drop off the child for nursery school, and tends to her job, and she gets home late, and so picks up the child, maybe 7 o'clock, whatever it is, has to feed the child, and bedtime, and that's it. That's the only interaction that the mother has with this, let's say, infant, young, very young, dependent child. And there's more interaction at the nursery school or the caregiver, let's say, whoever that might be, than her own the bond is lost so early on. And that's what the child needs more than anything to become a secure, a responsible individual and an adult. Misses out on that, winds up with all sorts of physical and emotional ailments.
Yeah.
And if the truth be known, that becomes the root cause of so many problems for people. And then take a look at the further consequences of that. You have an individual who's not whole, grows up to be dependent, is searching to become independent and be a responsible, interdependent person. And so the stress and the suffering that the child has to go through, and then the inability to contribute to society and the community in a meaningful way is lost as well. So we all lose, but we don't see that.
Yeah,
All we
that's the
see
key
is the
thing. We
corporate
don't see
ladder.
it.
The woman has to climb, because that's what's important in our society. That's what measures success. But at the end of the day, that goes away. At the end of your life, what does it all mean? And what you did as a career, what you did as and I speak for myself. What could be more important to raise your own children, be with your children? Boy, there's no
Yeah,
greater
and I think the same could
vocation
be
than
said
that.
for the corporate ladder for men as well. What is the why are we doing that as well? Right.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
that which
that,
would include men.
yeah, correct. It includes men. It's why are we doing what we're doing? And I would say that not everybody, because just because somebody's rich doesn't make them, or successful doesn't make them, everyone's going to be different. But I'd argue a significant amount of people are doing things that they don't want to do just for money, just to climb, just to get power, um, versus those who are rooted in strong value structures. Those
So
who are
what does a
doing
family
things.
do? What happens? What is a family that believes in these traditional values that are being lost? What are couples supposed to do? Because society is pulling them in different directions. The woman is being told that she's not good enough
Yeah.
if she's just going to be a stay-at-home mom. Well, so what does a man do if society says that it's okay for you to be more feminine? You should be more feminine. You
I
should be more
I think
emotional. What happens then? Where does the so-called traditional couple go? What do they? Where can they become? Where can they operate so that they are living their uh, true vocation of mother and father, true
yeah,
mother and father?
I think I made a video on what it is to be a man, and to me, it comes down to the first two commandments: trust in God with all your strength, all your heart, and all your might. What that means to be in modern terms is to go within yourself, and it's a process of death. And I say more so for men.
Not
Um,
easy to do, though. Not
no,
easy to do.
no, it's not a cute Facebook quote where you just say, "Oh, happiness." It's no, it's a painful death. It's
Yeah, for
the
every member in that family that's not operating according to what society says it should be.
yes,
Even the children in school, you could just picture. Children could be pretty mean with each other.
yeah,
So, my daddy, takes care of me and she's just like a mommy to me. It's the same thing. If that becomes the norm, you can see the traditional child who has a dad who become, is used to having the differences between mother and father, is not normal. So the child has to struggle with dealing with his own traditional values as opposed to more liberal values that are more generalized in society, that are more common and more accepted.
yeah.
So it's tough. It's a tough situation. So we can sit here and talk about, the right way to go and all this, but to live a life that goes against the grain now, not easy to do.
Yeah. I think the only way you can do it is by trusting in God. You go within. It's your GPS system. When there's no enemy within yourself, then not to say it'll be easy, but you have the ability to confront
Yeah.
the chaos of those who are not aligned with themselves, that they're
Yeah,
aligned
because
with external.
I'll have conversations with people, even in the family. We have conversations like, oh, why do we have to um, we have children? Why do we have children and we can't raise them? We have to give them to a care agency, or we have to give them to a nursery school while we're both off to work. Why can't we work it so that mom stays home, takes care of the house? And God knows there's a lot to do with that. And dad goes off and becomes the provider. The response that I get is, well, everybody does that. Everybody does that. That's the answer. Or it's like, you can't live today. It's too expensive today for just to have one source of income. Well, you really have to take a look at that.
Yeah, well,
Look
that's
at
just
your
another lie
expenses.
from the mind.
Yeah, because in reality, if it's truly economics, then you have to ask yourself, if you can't afford to do that, to become truly a mom and dad going off and be the provider and mom staying home and taking care of the domestic stuff. If you can't do that, then you have to ask yourself, in all honesty, why do you have a child?
Yeah.
You could take, you see a lot of people, a lot of poor people have 5, 6 kids, and I don't begrudge people having
Yeah.
kids, but if you can't provide them with, uh, the sustenance that they need and the basic necessities.
Then it's coming out of a
Well,
selfish.
yeah. So what it becomes, they become a burden to their own family.
But
and
I
a
think it's
burden
the
to society.
opposite if you go through it, because once you go through the understanding of why, because I think a family is beautiful, and I think it's actually our obligation, because it actually at a certain point becomes selfless through the understanding of why you're doing it. And then your incentive is actually to provide for the next generation and make this world a better place.
Yeah.
Very few people who have that insight. But I think once you get there, then it becomes a selfless act, because then it becomes, now you're giving the next generation of people to inspire other people to heal the ignorance and the wounds that we have from previous generations. But you only do that through insight, through inner growth, through death of the ego. And it's a painful process in a world that wants you to feel good and be comfortable, a mommy world.
Yeah. So I don't know what the answer is. All I can say is that you can control, basically,
you know,
have
the
to
answer.
deal with your own sphere of influence.
Correct.
Life according to your own values.
Correct.
And the rest of it, I think you have to let go. This could all be part of evolution too. And if it is, then we don't know where we're headed. Maybe we're headed in a place that it's supposed to be that we don't understand.
I think it swings both ways, right? It goes one way over a generation. We don't know what's happened decades ago. They say this is cyclical too. It goes left, it goes right, it goes feminine, it goes masculine.
Right.
We not just be part of this, and now we're more feminine, and we're trying to come back to that balance, right? Because the truth is, man is not better than woman, and woman is not better than man.
That's right.
We complement each other, correct? And we just forgot who we are.
Yeah. So it's interesting dilemma, but I guess it's all part of the mystery of life. We want to understand it all. We want to, as a consequence, we want to control it. We can't control it. We're not going to ever understand this mystery. The mystery is not, the life is not to solve the mystery. It's to live the reality. I think Alan Watts said something along those lines.
Yeah. And I also want to add to a caveat. I think I want to hammer in on this point, for any women listening. I don't think it's not my responsibility to tell anybody what to do. I think if a woman wants to climb the corporate ladder, if she wants to take on the roles of a man, I say go for it. I don't think there's no shame or no guilt to do it. But at the same time, I'm going to share how I see it and how I've suffered from taking on feminine roles, right? Get in touch with my feelings. And I learned a lot from it. I learned a lot of emotional intelligence, right? That I'm able to express my emotions and be okay with that, right? But I also see the problem with and the attraction. But to me, the strongest attractions I've had in my life is when I've been in my masculine and not faking it. I'm in my own power. And the weakest I've had is when I was so in touch with my emotions, so emotionally unstable and expressing my emotions and looking for emotional validity. That's when I had the weakest attractions in my life. So, so it's not to say someone, I say, if you want to do it, do it. And if you think you can do all that and want to do all that, go ahead. But I think long-term, you end up, it's not sustainable. And it's not, to me, what gives me meaning is there's something in my heart that just makes me feel so good to provide to a woman, and who appreciates that. And
because it's natural.
Yeah, and I wouldn't, because I think there's a lot of men.
It's not because you want to be the boss.
Yes.
Right. It's not.
Yes.
You don't want to control. It's not. It's just.
It's not control.
Right.
But at the same time, it is control. Right. It's a natural. It's like to be in control of myself. If I say it from one context, it's natural. I'm in control. I don't need that validation. I'm in control. I feel good. Versus I need to be in control.
See, what about the other side of it too? Isn't it, in a sense, the woman could look at the same thing? She as the domestic caretaker in the home. That's what she does.
Yeah.
So don't we become submissive to that? Don't we just? So isn't she controlling her affairs?
Yes.
So isn't it another way we play with words? In another way, maybe we can be submissive to each other. Is that more palatable to people?
Yeah,
But I think
yeah.
what we're both trying to say is that let's just be our natural selves and see what happens.
Yeah, it's a surrender on both sides. Yeah, you definitely can play around with the words. Surrender to, your true self, and then everything else takes care of it. You're not thinking anymore. The
Yeah,
roles
right,
are, you're not
right,
thinking, I need to be a
right.
man, I need to be a
Yeah,
woman, and it's
exactly. That's
naturally,
where we get in trouble with the thinking.
yeah,
Exactly. And
yeah.
then
In order
we
to be
want
a
to be
man, I have
posed.
to make this much money in order to do this. No, it's just, connect in love, grow in
Yeah.
love.
And over time, I've seen that with myself. I mean,
Yeah,
no matter, I don't need to be the man as in terms of what the specification might look like.
yeah.
I just need to be true to myself and to take my responsibility seriously in the household. And I do, I see it here. I don't need to enforce the fact that I'm a man and therefore I'm the boss. No, when I let go of that, everything happens accordingly. So that
Yeah,
something
there's so
great.
much power in not needing the power, and you actually
Yeah,
become more powerful. There's levels of paradox. If I don't
yeah,
need to be in
right.
control, I'm in control.
Yeah,
If you do something that, and I think that's important too, is to set up the boundaries. If you break a boundary, um, you're breaking the code that we live in. So there's, and to implement consequences for that, not out of fear and all that, but I'm going to treat you as I want to be treated. And if you break that, then, we have to create those boundaries.
yeah,
So, maybe I pull away my time, right?
yeah.
If it becomes, because we have to respect each other. Love is founded on respect. And I think this ties into why there's a lot of weak men, where the man who doesn't set up boundaries. And again, the roles, right? It's when you start talking like this, it can get lost in translation, but
But also the thing is,
love and
uh,
respect are connected.
absolutely, yeah, they go hand in hand. There's no doubt. But then here, what's important to understand too, I think, is when two people get married, they need to understand, are they in sync with this? Do
Yeah.
they, not that, they're separate, they're different people, don't get me, we're different people in many ways. But if we don't share these values we're talking about, we're just going to wind up separating, divorce. And this is why the divorce rate, one of the reasons why,
Yeah.
can't generalize. One of the reasons I would say, speculate, because I really don't know, I didn't do any research,
Yeah.
based on my own instinct and my own observations, is that, if one spouse thinks one way, and again, let's say that there's no right or wrong way, but if one spouse thinks one way and the other spouse thinks another way, eventually it's not gonna work. And
Yeah.
who's gonna suffer? The child suffers, the family
Yeah.
suffers. So I think, maybe to sum it up, I mean, we've complicated the world. It was pretty simple. And maybe because of the unconsciousness of mankind, the mind, like as you say, the thought patterns were way out of kilter. And we've lost who we really are. We're losing who we really are. Maybe it's not too late, but
No,
we're
I don't think it
losing.
is. I think we're going through the birthing pains of rediscovering that. And I think it's going to be painful because we've lived not aligned with the truth for so long. But I think to me, like, I think about God, right? Like, if God is anything, it's just the isness, and either we're aligned with it or we're not. And if we're not aligned with it, we suffer. And it's okay either way. So maybe we need to suffer more. And it's not nobody has to suffer. You just have to come in alignment with the truth. But it's thy truth, not my truth. It's thy way. And what's thy way? To me, it's, religions have tried to talk about it, trying to make things permanent will create suffering because the world is impermanent. Like little things like that, or, treat others as you would like to be treated. And when you have to be really radically honest, because like I said, when I first started this podcast, I realized how full of shit I was. And I said that in a lot of videos. I'm full of shit. And it wasn't coming from a poor, me, negative mindset. I was full of shit. Hey, I'll be there at 10 o'clock. I wasn't there at 10 o'clock. So I lived my life like this based on patterns of being a hypocrite. So as I started to really clarify that and really be specific with my words and grow in integrity, and I have my bumps along the way and I'll have my bumps moving forward. I try to align that with the highest truth. And as I do that, I'm in connection with God. And I still have a lot of work to do to see clearly. And I realize it's massive, it's full responsibility. My suffering is my fault, not in a poor me, and the nurture part of me says, hey, I was
Well, that's
born
good
into a
news. When
crazy,
you see that,
yeah. Yeah,
Because you
because
take
everything,
responsibility and fix it.
yeah, everything's my fault. It's also my opportunity to see clearly. So it's a blessing and a curse. So, and as I see it, then that's how I am, how I'm able to change it.
Right, and through this whole process here of becoming who we are, is truly understanding, how we need to love and respect ourselves first, put ourselves first. So we can stand on our values and our principles, and we can learn to become interdependent with our neighbors and in the community, and then work together towards, higher goals.
Yeah,
Sometimes we lose that.
we need the Declaration of Interdependence.
Yeah, but you can't be interdependent until you reach the goal
Correct.
of being independent.
Because once you're independent, then you can really be there for other people, can depend on you. And then in your moments where you are dependent,
Yeah.
and life punches you in the face, you can be dependent on them. Yeah.
How many people never get to the interdependent stage because
Yeah.
they're
Still
never taking
working on it
responsibility
myself.
for their own lives. Yeah, becoming independent basically is very simply taking responsibility, learning to take responsibility for your own life. If you can't take responsibility for your own life, how could you ever be a good spouse? How could you ever be an important member of community, a productive member of the community? You're too dependent. You're taking. You're not giving. You're taking from the community. You can't give until you're independent, responsible person. I think.
Well said. And on that note, anything else you want to add
No,
before you're going away to Italy?
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait. It's been 3 years in the coming with this pandemic.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Should be fun. I'll keep you posted.
Yeah. Well, I think wise words, it comes back to the same thing we talk about every time. It's about being conscious and present.
Yeah.
So, and hopefully this lights up some lights in people's heads, it makes people click. Somebody sees this video and says, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. And it gives a little clarity, a little hope that there's still some people who are sane in this world.
Yeah, because we're all suffering, it's not easy being in this world, trying to navigate and figure things out. So it's important. I think your messages out there are appreciated and useful. I hope so.
Yeah, well, my message is your message too. So, the credit goes to me and you.
Good.
So, all right.
All right, Michael.
Buongiorno, buonasera, enjoy Italia.
Yeah, viva l'Italia.
So, and I look forward to our next talk.
All right, sounds good. Take care. See you later.